Hello and welcome to this video tutorial. Today we're looking at poking a hole inside a pattern-filled object. Now this was a question that was posed to me by one of my subscribers, and what they wanted to do was to be able to poke a hole inside a shape and still have the shape filled with a pattern, so that there would effectively be something in the middle that would be see-through. Well, you can do that a couple of different ways, so let's go and see how we'll do that. I've got just a brand new regular document here in Illustrator. I'm going to start out with a circle at the very bottom, and the reason for this is that I want something to be able to show you that in actual fact this is being successful. So let's go and take the stroke off this circle and let's go and fill it with a color so that we'll be able to see it. So we're just going to tuck that away for now. Then we're going to add a rectangle the exact size of the artboard, and we're going to fill it with a pattern. So my artboard happens to be 1920 by 1080, so I'm just making my rectangle that size. I'm filling my artboard with it. Now that doesn't have to fill the artboard. If you want a shape that is smaller than that but with a hole in it, that's just fine. You just make the shape that you want to have filled with a pattern, and we're just going to fill it with a pattern. There are some patterns shipped with Illustrator here that I'm going to fill it with, and you can see that the pattern itself is partially transparent, so we are seeing the circle behind it. Now I'm going to make a duplicate of this rectangle that's filled with the pattern, because I'm going to show you two ways of achieving the same result. I'm going to lock down and turn off the top one so we can't see that. This is the one that we're working on here. I'm going to make a square hole in this rectangle, and one of the ways of doing that is what's called a transparency mask. Now you can get to a transparency mask from the appearance panel. So you go to Window and Appearance, you have your shape selected, and down here you can get to your transparency mask. The problem is that this dialog keeps opening and closing, and so you're better off using Window and then Transparency, because that gives you the actual transparency dialog and it doesn't open and close when you least expect it. So I have my rectangle selected. We can check that in the Layers palette. You can see here I've got my rectangle selected. I'm going to click here on Make Mask, because that adds a mask, a black filled mask in this case, to the entire document. And what's happened is that the black filled mask has hidden the entire contents of my original rectangle. The entire rectangle is hidden, and that is in part because there's a clip option here. So I'm going to disable clip, and you can see that that has brought back my shape. Now I'm going to put a filled rectangle in here, but before I do, I have to actually click on the mask. So gets a little blue border around it, and so that's telling me I'm now working on the mask and not the rectangle, because if I try and do this on the rectangle, everything's going to go really haywire. So just be careful that you're noticing in the transparency dialog what is selected in here. Blue border around it, this is the mask. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going back to my default colors, but I am going to reverse them. So I've got black fill, and I'm going to make no stroke at all. And I'm going to add my rectangle. Again, I'm working on the mask, so I'm adding a rectangle to the mask layer. I'm having trouble seeing where my mouse is, but here it is. Okay. So as soon as I add a black filled rectangle to the mask, what happens is I'm poking a hole effectively inside the larger rectangle. Now the other thing with masks is that you need to be careful about what you're doing before you exit this, because if you just go and exit right now, you're actually going to be in mask editing mode. So when we open up the Layers panel, you can see that we're working on the opacity mask. All the other content has disappeared. So before you leave this transparency dialog, you have to click here to stop editing the transparency mask. And you see my Layers panel came back. This is another reason why working with the transparency panel makes better sense than trying to do it through the appearance panel, because the appearance panel closes down. It's really easy to forget that you haven't come back out of mask editing mode. So I can close this down because everything's working just fine. So you can see over here in the Layers palette that there is a square missing out of the rectangular shape, and it's masked. It's done using a mask. So as I go down to my circle, let me just lock down this rectangle before I do that, because it's too easy to grab it. You'll see that it is a transparent white area, and we can see through it to the background, and the background could be a green circle, it could be nothing at all. So if we were to save this file, for example, as a ping file and save transparency, the area that is white here is actually transparent, so we'd be able to see through it, for example. Okay, that's the first method. Let's just turn that off. Let's go to the second rectangle here, make it visible. The other way that you can poke a hole in this is to go and draw another shape. So I'm going to go over the top here and I'm just going to draw my rectangular shape that I want to be cut out of this shape here. I'll want to position it in place exactly where I want it to be, and then I'll select both this green rectangle here and my shape that is filled with my pattern, and I'm just going to the Pathfinder palette. You can get to that by choosing Window and then Pathfinder. There is an option here that is called minus front. So if I click on that, it's going to subtract the rectangle from the underlying shape. And again, see here, I've actually got a fixed shape. Now this is fixed, whereas this one is a mask. So this one could be edited, so we could move this rectangle around. In this case, the rectangle is fixed inside the shape. But again, we've got the exact same result. We've been able to poke a hole in the middle of our shape that is transparent, and so that again would be saved as a transparent hole were we to save this object as a ping file. So I hope this has given you some ideas as to how you can poke holes in objects. And so in answer to the subscriber who saw the video on cropping and clipping masks, who asked how they could make sure that the pattern would be left outside, so they would crop away the middle bit and leave the pattern outside, this is how you're going to do it, and you can choose either of these methods. Now before we end up, I have more Illustrator training at Skillshare.com. When you sign up for Skillshare, you get access to thousands of classes there, including over 250 of mine. In the description below is a Skillshare coupon for you, which is at least as good as the current Skillshare offer, and typically mine will be better. I also have Illustrator training at Udemy.com, and there's a referral link for every one of those courses in the description below. Please feel free to share these with family, friends, and co-workers. I hope this video has been of help to you, that you've learned things about Illustrator of which you were previously unaware. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so you'll be alerted when new videos are released. Until next time, I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you so much for joining me here on my YouTube channel.